is a Countdown Bulletin podcast. I'm Keith Olbermann, and in a news conference suggesting actual, virulent, uncontrolled madness and requiring his immediate removal under the terms of the 25th Amendment to the Constitution, the President of the United States of America insisted that a horrific tragedy that had occurred barely 14 hours earlier, that had claimed the lives of 64 passengers and crew, including at least 14 members of the American figure skating community, including 2 teenage champions and their coaches and their mothers, to say nothing of the deaths of 3 active serving U.S. military personnel in a helicopter. This nightmare excuse for a human being insisted this accident was caused by DEI. This is the President of the United States who forced out the head of the Federal Aviation Administration last week and did not bother to even appoint an acting FAA commissioner to succeed him until after they were already fishing the bodies out of the Potomac. This is the President of the United States who appointed not an idiot Fox News propagandist host to be Transportation Secretary, but rather appointed an idiot Fox News propagandist host's husband, a man who cannot successfully say the word pattern. He pronounces it pattern. This is the President of the United States who a week ago yesterday froze the hiring of new air traffic controllers, which had already been gutted by the Republican House and the previous Republican presidency, the quantity and quality of which has been in unchecked crisis since Ronald Reagan fired all 11,000 of this nation's air traffic controllers in 1981. But sure, it's DEI. Or as Trump's idiot lawyer Alina Habba called it last night on television in a malapropism with tragic implications, quote, DIE. It's DEI when they cannot confirm if the helicopter pilot actually gave control, confirmation that he saw the lights of the jet with which he collided, but was looking at the wrong jet or at the wrong lights. When they cannot even yet rule out hypotheticals, when they don't even know yet if either the plane or the helicopter had some kind of catastrophic mechanical failure, when they cannot figure out if communications somehow shorted out, or if any of 1,000 other possible tragedies unfolded, or if the Pentagon, Pete Hegseth's Pentagon, caused this by running a training mission at night in the middle of the approach to the busiest runway in the country. But Trump is certain because he's Trump, and he is a super genius, and he knows everything, and he already told you that, and he's always right, and he blamed it on DEI and Pete Buttigieg and Joe Biden, I guess because he's a super genius, but nobody told him that he has been president of the United States for 11 days now, and his people have been in charge for 11 days now, and if he thinks he gets a pass because they all just started only because they dragged their feet on the transition process in which nameless, faceless bureaucrats in the outgoing administration warn nameless, faceless bureaucrats in the incoming administration of the challenges and the crises and the fixes that were only mid-fix. This was the process Trump skipped. But Trump does not bother with details because he is materially brain damaged and evil and descending into some combination of senility and insanity, and because he long ago stopped processing the world around him. And if he hears 100 differing voices, it turns out they're all inside his world-threatening head.
Today, blamed the diversity elements, but then told us that you weren't sure that the controllers made any mistake. We then said perhaps the helicopter pilots were the ones who made the mistake.
It's all under investigation.
I understand that. That's why I'm trying to figure out how you can come to the conclusion right now that diversity had something to do with this crash.
Because I have common sense, okay? And unfortunately, a lot of people don't.
Of course, he does not have common sense. He does not have sense of any kind. That is the gist of this nightmare. That is the essence of this crisis. The studies of Professors Dunning and Kruger long ago established by asking participants how they thought they did on an exam compared to everybody else taking the same exam, that it really is true. The people who know the most and are the smartest will assume that there are others around them who know more or have studied harder, who at least know as much. The people who know the least, though, are convinced they literally know everything and no one else knows anything, that they, of course, finished first among the exam takers. On average, it turns out, with remarkable consistency, that those who think they have finished in the top quarter have almost invariably finished in the second to lowest quarter. It is called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and it has now reached its terminal, final, tragic, insolvable nadir in Donald Trump. I will add here that if you doubt the pervasiveness, the completeness of Trump's malfunctioning brain and malfunctioning personality, he conducted his news conference, having apparently had today or yesterday, and not realized it looked like this, having had yesterday or today, his eyebrows dyed a yellowish-white, unlike any color he has ever previously dyed them, so startling that his face gave the appearance that his actual brows had been stolen, or perhaps had fallen victim to DEI. He did not notice, and no one could tell him. Would that it was all as stupid and embarrassing as that. Would that it stopped here. For at the same moment, Trump was explaining that he, with eyebrows that looked like the Joe Pesci character from the JFK movie, only white, knew what caused the crash. It was DEI. In fact, all that proves is that he has learned how to say DEI when others, like Alina Habba, didn't quite master it. While the news conference was ongoing, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. was on Capitol Hill, still unable to explain what Medicare Parts A, B, and C are, even though he was questioned about this exact same thing last week, and thus was given notice that this might come up on the exam, and he could have spent some 5-minute span in the last week and could have put his hands on a book rather than on his penis in front of a camera phone. Mr. Kennedy also again repeatedly denied things he has said and positions he has taken, and he insisted that blacks should get fewer vaccines than whites do. If Mr. Kennedy, the nominee to run Health and Human Services, really wants to improve health and provide human services in this country, he should look into donating his body to science. Perhaps later this week. And at the same time, these things were going on. Trump's nominee to ruin the FBI. I'm sorry, that was a typo. It's run the FBI. Oh, no, it is ruin the FBI. Trump's nominee at FBI was asked if he could say Joe Biden won the 2020 election. Just repeat those words. And Kash Patel literally could not and would not say them. Patel was also asked if he knew the fascist and white supremacist talk show host and podcaster Stu Peters, and he said, not off the top of my head, no. And Senator Dick Durbin then listed the 8 times Kash Patel had appeared on a webcast called The Stu Peters Show. And in front of a Senate committee, Trump's nominee to be Director of National Lack of Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, imploded when she was asked about a predicament only somebody as careless and arrogant and fundamentally stupid as she is could get themselves into. Were you aware, asked New Mexico Senator Martin Heinrich, that the Islamic cleric you met during your inexplicable 2017 trip to meet the leaders of the Assad dictatorship in Syria, were you aware that this cleric had threatened to activate a network of suicide bombers in the U.S. and Europe? Answer yes, and you are a traitor. Answer no, and you are a dangerous buffoon. And Gabbard answered, I was not, and I had not heard that until today. That Trump has filled his, quote, government, unquote, with legitimately, literally incompetent people is a tragedy on its own, the debris from which is still being taken out of the Potomac. But what multiplies this nightmare, what expands it beyond all proportion, what turns it and turns Trump into a clear and present danger to every person in this country and every person on this planet is that instead of the final line of defense against a team of morons being the proverbial president with the sign on the desk reading "The buck stops here." The final line of defense in this world today is this dangerous, arrogant, condescending, unstable, below-average intelligence monster whose metamorphosis into a candidate for institutionalization has now peaked with his latest, newest, strangest obsession, his conviction that the answer to any crisis, that the answer to any tragedy, that the response to any real human pain is to blame it on DEI. Donald Trump must be removed from office. Impeachment bills to be filed weekly until the minority party regains control of the House might work. No faster than 2 years from now. The 25th Amendment, providing for an emergency remedy for the exact inability to discharge the powers and duties of the presidency that Trump exhibited today, is the correct way to save this country. It is also, I add with, I hope, gravity and not menace in my voice, it is also the easiest. This has been a Countdown Bulletin podcast. The next scheduled edition is Monday. I'm Keith Olbermann.